That's a load of science.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of That's a Lot of Science, the podcast about science and everything about it. Today we have an amazing guest, Hannes, software development scientist in AstraZeneca. So, Hannes, first of all, thank you very much for accepting my invitation to be in the podcast and welcome. Um, at the beginning, I usually leave the guests to talk a little bit about themselves. So I leave the stage to you, Hannes, if you can describe what you do now, what is your background, a little bit of your story, let's say.
Okay, thank you very much today for having me. Yeah, it's really great. Hello to everyone who is listening and tuning in today. We just briefly introduce myself. So my name is Hannes Loffler. I'm currently a scientist at AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca is a global pharmaceutical company with various locations. I myself are located in Gothenburg, Sweden at the moment. We have also sites, the main sites is in Cambridge, UK. We have a larger research site in Gaithersburg in the US, but also other many presences in terms of manufacturing and of course regulatory in almost any country of the world. My role is I'm the lead developer and current maintainer of a software called reInvent. So that is a tool for generative AI chemistry for small molecules and also peptides in the meantime. It is open source, so anybody who is interested can use that in a form that basically we're also using internally. A brief description of what reInvent is. It's a molecular design tool for de novo design, scaffold hopping, R group replacement, linker design, molecule optimizations. So that's typically design task that a computational chemist wants to do. It's basically saying, I want a new molecule with a certain contact, with certain properties I want to have, or I have a piece of a molecule that I think is good for me to start into a drug design process. So that's basically what it comes down to. It has been around since 2017 or so, at least internally. So it's actually one of the older ones in the family of generative AI chemistry software tools. It used actually also in other pharmaceutical companies. We know that because it is open source, so we open it to everyone, agrochemicals, smaller biotech companies, but also a lot of students actually use this as part of their thesis. So it's actually quite interesting that it is has quite a lot of interest in the community, also in the academic community, so on a larger scale as well. I personally do also research on top of reInvent. At the moment, it's mostly about active learning and optimally designing ligands. That's in collaboration with UCL. So we're also having academic collaborations. And maybe just about previous steps in my career. So I've more or less always been a scientific software developer, although a background in chemistry, really, in theoretical chemistry and in simulation. So I spent many years in the UK. I was with Cresset. So that is a software provider for computational chemistry and medicinal chemists. Before that, I was with Eli Lilly. That's another big pharmaceutical company, probably very well known in the meantime, by some measuring them number one at the moment. Before that, in government research, basically, and as I have said, I have actually a background in chemistry.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Thank you very much for sharing your background. It's really impressive, actually. And yeah, I mean, you already talk a lot about many things that are interesting in the topic for today's episode, like how these kind of softwares and how the development of these softwares actually can support the drug discovery process. You were talking about this generative AI for novel molecule generation. So we're talking about the very early stage of the drug discovery process when you have identified your target and you want to have a novel molecule that is not covered by any patent and has certain properties. So then you can start your synthesis. And that is definitely a good help. I'm a chemist myself as a background, and I remember that first part when to have that idea of a novel molecule has always been kind of challenging, and it's great to see this novel software coming and support and speed up this process. And how do you see this also for like later stages, no, when it comes to lead optimization or preclinical or further phases down the line in the drug discovery and development?
But before moving forward, a word from our sponsor, IDM Insight. IDM Insight is an interactive intelligence platform that brings the latest pharmaceutical AI innovation to early drug discovery and clinical teams, pairing the latest technological advancements from AWS Cloud and cutting-edge science disciplines. Insight is able to save drug development and clinical teams time and money by simplifying your interactions with intelligence data and AI solution into one centralized platform. Check out the platform for yourself at idm-insight.com. That's idm-insight.com.
Yeah, of course, it's very challenging, of course, to do drug discovery and development. It's a very lengthy process. It is very expensive overall. And I think what we always need to point out is, of course, the success rate, which is very, very low. So from the very start, when you start this thinking about what disease you want to tackle here, to actually having a medicine out in the market, the numbers are staggering, really. The latest one I've seen is something like $6 billion that it costs. So the hope is, of course, that we can accelerate all of this process, and also with the help of software tools, and specifically now what we're discussing here about artificial intelligence tools.
And
yes.
No, exactly. And this artificial intelligence, but also like what was before. No, artificial intelligence is a recent advancement, but the development of softwares and tools to help this process has been around for a while, no?
Yes, they have been around for actually a very long time. Computers in chemistry are probably as old as computers, more or less, themselves. Interestingly, also artificial intelligence, so machine learning. So one of the earliest machine learning programs was actually, I think it was called Dendral or so, I don't really remember exactly what it was. So that the desire to use computers, software, and machine learning AI was always there very, very early on. And the hope is, of course, that it would accelerate the whole process. Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to, yes, and hopefully an acceleration process. But we would probably also need to discuss a little bit on how actually we go about it, because it's a very wide field, very different topics. You're talking here mainly about drug discovery process, but of course it's also then important for clinical trials, where you could hopefully make use of AI. So it's a very wide field, yes.
Yeah. And how the innovation works in this field? Like, how do you come up with an idea and say, "Oh, look, this is like a software that can help," how can I think about a novel software or a novel tool that would help in the whole process for scientific project in general?
Yeah, you have to be, of course, clear on this one. Part of that is because software is made outside, so whatever is provided, you have to keep an eye on what software providers offer you. And internally, we very much so in the department I work in is very much how should I call it? Research oriented. So we make a lot of software internally, specifically for generative AI. Also for synthesis predictions. So that's what we do internally. So how do the innovations come in? Obviously you observe the field, you have an idea what you want to do. At the moment, a lot is of course about generation in 3D. So, for example, a ligand in the protein, so started with AlphaFold, obviously, and that's an extension of it. And a lot, of course, what we are doing also is collaboration with academia. So we have a lot of students here who obviously also bring in new ideas from their respective fields. A lot of that is heavy in AI, for example. So that's their backgrounds, and that's how innovation comes in.
Yeah. Amazing. And then I think when, AI became like a big thing, like few years ago, some years ago now, there was a lot of focus and attention on that specific topic, on how to use it, how to apply to science, and you already talk about the generative AI and how it is used to generate novel molecules from data or from different approaches. How does it work? For those people that don't have a clear idea of how a Gen AI works, like if you can give us like an overview on like what kind of process are involved, what type of functions, and also what's going on now there in the pharmaceutical sector. What are the latest initiatives, latest developments for accelerating the process and optimizing the process as you mentioned before.
Yes, so we can't maybe a little bit technical about generative AI. Also, the understanding generally, I think, is already there because it's very closely related to what we know as large language models, ChatGPT. Maybe a little bit technically, what we are doing, we work on the basis of a textual representation of a molecule. That's just called smile strings. Which in a form encodes the molecular graph as such. And we do what is essentially distribution learning over that. So we learn what is the sequence, how is a molecule built basically atom by atom, and use that information then to build a distribution on top of that enables us then to sample from that distribution and generate new molecules. And specifically the way how we do it is reinforcement learning, which basically means we get outside signals to drive the process of molecule generations through so-called scoring component, which basically just means it's an assessment as to the quality of the molecule. Yeah. So for example, you could do measuring physicochemical properties are important, for example, in terms of log P, for example, which tells you how would it partition in the cell or in the human body. You could have models that somehow have an idea how toxic it would be, how it would be distributing in the body, and so on. So that can help a lot in designing molecules that are hopefully better than just some random molecule. So that's technically what is happening there. And specifically from that viewpoint, what the hope is that if you can generate molecules, and hopefully in an economical and in a successful way, in terms by successful means at least better than what existing tools do. So, and better means here specifically what the properties are for a molecule. We have certain ideas that they should be drug-like. So the acceleration process from this specific view would be obviously that we can generate those molecules faster, cheaper, and in a better quality. That's what I think eventually comes down to.
Yeah, exactly. Also like reduce the number of molecules that you have to synthesize and make to actually find the one that is the drug that is going to be at the at the clinical stage, or like at the patient's bed in the hospital. So that would save also like time, money, and it would be a way more efficient process. And you talk about different aspects, from, of course, an extensive knowledge of software development, informatics, chemoinformatics, but also, chemical and biological properties. You mentioned log P, but we can talk about many others. How do you combine those? Like sometimes we feel like chemists and software development people don't really talk the same language, let's say, or they don't really get to understand each other. How do you address that? Like, I mean, you say you have a background in chemistry, so you can, let's say, understand both. But when it comes to facing with I don't know, chemist or biologist or pharmacologist, how this is addressed? I mean, to make them more aware or more in line with the process of developing new softwares.
Yes, so that's certainly a very interesting topic because it comes back to communicating at a human level. So that's probably always the most important point. Even though we like to talk a lot about artificial intelligence, it's still very much a human business. And as such, that is, of course, very important how we get that communication across different fields. I mean, the backgrounds, of course, are very varying. So as you pointed out, a few roles. So specifically now here for the software generation, these are people who have a background in computer science. So sometimes very hardcore computer science. There are people who have a background in computational chemistry and know how to apply those, how that works in an actual drug discovery project. Then IT and software development need to be involved in here. And how do we go about this? So we are very multidisciplinary, obviously. You need to develop a common understanding over time. So it's not that people come in right away and know what, maybe don't even know what a pharmaceutical does in details. Yeah, so you could come in as a computer scientist and just be a specialist in your field, but it's not necessarily an immediate requirement that you know everything about what a specific sector of a company does. So part of this is, of course, learning on the job. Yeah, so you need to learn what other people are doing. So it's a lot in communication, self-education that you need to do. So that's a very important component there. And of course, ideally, you always have people that sort of a little bit in between. So that's probably my strengths here, that I have this background in chemistry and can understand various parts, at least at the superficial level sometimes but this is certainly also very helpful. So it comes really down to a lot, of course, to be able to communicate, to learn that style of communication and to learn the language that is used in a specific field.
Yeah. I mean, the importance of communication in every field, but specifically this, with all these new techniques being developed, new tools being developed every day. It's so important. I mean, you can really put a value on it, and definitely. I mean, I think it's also very exciting time now to work in this area. I mean, everyone wants to have something that scream AI out there, even though sometimes we know it's not actually AI, it's something else, and they just put a nice label on it. But it is important that there is this interest, because we could really see the impact, that this is going to have in the next 5 to 10 years. Of course, for us in the drug discovery world, but also like in every other aspects. And do you see a lot of sort of interconnection between other industries rather than the pharmaceutical that have or had an impact or will have probably an impact? Probably some tool or technique developed for other aims that can be useful or can be translated into the pharmaceutical sectors?
Yeah, that's of course a very interesting one, because I mean, it's when you think about the whole undertaking of just discovering drug, it's obviously not just about finding new molecules as such. It's not just that the chemists always directly working on that. A specific field that of course is here interesting is the whole field of robotics, for example. So making laboratories as far as possible automated, but also autonomous. So laboratories that make molecules, test them, and give you the results back, do the analysis, and can do hopefully also on decision by themselves. So there's certainly a wide field, of course, that we have certain impact there. From there, then just principle also where AI is very far progress, probably the field where it's furthest progress is image recognition. I mean, that's of course very important in generally in the medical field. I mean, we have this story about replacing radiologists, which has not become a true, but it's a very valuable tool there just to recognize what you do on an image. And what we have there, for example, is specifically cell lines. So you're doing experiments, you see changes in the cell, and you can capture that in an image, and then you can have an AI run over it and inform you about that, what is happening, just simply because of the scale at what that is happening, and sometimes because you don't see the minuscule details that are happening there. So I think there are various fields that have an impact here that are, in a sense, traditional AI, but not necessarily everything is generative AI. I think we should point that out as well. I mean, there's a lot of hype around what generative AI should be and what it can do and actually can't. But I mean, there are so many other subfields of AI that we see also having impact, and very much direct impact also in a pharmaceutical company.
Amazing. Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, like super important to point that out. I mean, it's not just about generative AI, but it's the whole world and the hype that this has been generating, and we need to be realistic as well. I mean, there are things that it cannot be done yet, probably in the future, but definitely something that would help moving towards the results in the future. And how it is approached, like in your company or in the company that you worked before, if you had the chance, like the possibility, I mean, to start some, AI development or some department dedicated to AI. Is there something that was, in particular for the pharmaceutical sector, when it started, it was well welcomed? It was something that there was a little bit of, I wouldn't say fear, but a little bit of concern about it. And how it is now? I mean, between companies, you already told like your softwares are open source, so people can use it, and other companies' softwares are open source as well. But how is the collaboration among companies? Of course, there is some competition as well. So how, I wouldn't say transparent, but how is the sharing of information between a company in this area? I mean, you see like it's more open than it used to be for other stuff before, or not very much actually?
Yeah, so that's a lot of questions. So just guide me through them so that we don't miss anyone, because they're all very interesting, and I think we should have a discussion about that one. Yes, so where do we start out? You were talking a little bit about misconception and fear of AI. That's, of course, a fundamental problem, and very much a problem for society as a whole, because, as you said, there's a lot of information out there that is just not appropriate and doesn't describe where the field really is. Describes a lot where people think the field should be, which is not necessarily aligns well with what people want and so on. So I'm specifically talking about the hype. Yeah, we have mentioned that now many times around LLMs, and the reactions are very much split over that. I specifically know that software engineers are particular dismissive. I have to say it really dismissive of the field, because they say, it's actually very stupid and so on. Maybe not quite the right approach. Yes, it's certainly not there where it is, but we have also think in the future, and it will change. There will be massive changes probably in future, depending on how it really develops, and we have to think about that and to take that into account. And as it stands at the moment, you can make it a valuable tool for yourself when you learn how to use it. And that's where we stand. So when we talk about fears, at least at the right at the moment, there are probably not these fears that a lot of people will lose their jobs. It may more modify their jobs at the moment. And for the futures in, I don't know, 20, 30 years, I can't tell you that. So I'm afraid that I can't answer you to that questions. What else did we have in your question?
So no, but about like, yeah, I mean, given this sort of fear, when this sort of technology came up, and how the big pharma, I mean, I don't know if you were, yeah, I mean, if you still were in AstraZeneca or in other companies. I mean, how did you see in the pharmaceutical sector specifically how this was welcomed? I mean, if it was something that immediately was, accepted, and there were, I could see there were a lot of AI department being built in companies, but I mean, from an internal point of view, how was this approach, and how was this accepted when there started to be this hype about AI?
Yeah, that's interesting. So as a career for me, it's a relatively new. It just have started 2 years ago here with AstraZeneca. Before that one, it was more in traditional methods. From my personal observation, there's certainly some skepticism, yes, also from software providers to actually engage in that, because the general perception was, yeah, that's too early days and maybe it's not that useful in practice, which to a certain degree is, of course, at least at that time, certainly also justified. As far as the pharmaceutical companies goes, now, of course, it's very much embraced. Everybody wants to do that. And I think it's also down to the hype around specifically LLMs. Yeah, I think it certainly in early days, it certainly came down more to individual who tried to push that. Yeah, you saw the potential in the technology, and to get that to work and start. So especially here in AstraZeneca, I mean, 2017 is fairly early, certainly not the first one, but fairly early to work with this kind of tools and get that going. And a lot about that is, of course, convincing people, and the attitudes there are sometimes very different. I mean, especially with medicinal chemists. I mean, they have a very strong domain knowledge. They have very much an experience in that one, and very much based on that. That's just very natural that they see also from the experience from the tools that have been in the past and that have maybe not contributed as much as it has been hyped, because hype is not new. It has been always around. So there's a certain skepticism there, but not necessarily as a group as such. I mean, there's individuals who are very much open. Just recently talked to a different section in the company where the chemists seem to be very much open to tools. They want to use them, want to apply them, and they seem to also very quick in synthesizing something that comes out of the tool, which is very interesting, because that might not be always the attitudes that you find when you interact with, especially with chemists. I mean, I don't want to be dismissive here, and I mean, these concerns are very much valid, because I mean, a tool is a tool, and it's still also early days, and you have to see what they really will be able to do. So that's perfectly fine. So from that point of view, I think it's a little bit mixed, but it's certainly changing. So the attitudes are changing when people see that there's a certain use in it, yes. And to a certain degree that is happening.
And how long did it take, I mean, before there was this change in mentality, or like in the mindset?
That's just, it's usually over the years, yes. So it is really, I mean, it's very, at the end of the day, it's down to the individual, how open they are to new things. That's really what it comes down to, and how objective you can be about your things. But it certainly takes years, and still certainly ongoing. Some people are just objective because they don't see maybe those tools do what they think it should be doing, and expecting that in the sum of it is still providing a better service to the whole process. Yes, that it can do the job simply better, which is of course certainly justified, because it's also depends specifically in what subfield you're working, specifically therapeutic areas. Some are more easier accessible to tools than others. That's just the way how it is. And then you had the question about how the collaboration works between
exactly,
companies.
because of course there is a lot of competition between companies, that's sure, but for this specific area it seems that there is a little bit of more openness, and you mentioned the open source softwares that you develop, but also like the information, the data. How is that now? Do you see a difference from how it was before for other fields that you worked?
Yes, the principal problem is there is simply not enough data. And at the end of the day, it's actually not enough knowledge about human disease, human biology. So that's certainly a fundamental problems. And in this sense, each company is a bit of a data silo, which have specific knowledge that you would really need to really progress medicines as such to produce better medicines. So that is certainly a problem in itself, and there are efforts in that area that go into the right direction. I think it's certainly about tools. At least some companies are open. We should also not forget that companies also do publish, so you get things out there, and yeah, it's not always easy to reproduce what is happening there, but this information gets out there. But specifically, what I have in mind is this federated learning. That is several pharmaceuticals are involved in that. What it basically comes down to, so that's the Melody project. I don't know if you ever heard about this one. So basically, comes out about it. You don't share the data, but the models that you build on.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So that you have models that you can then exchange. You don't specifically know what they were trained on, but that's one way how you can, for example, exchange the data without opening yourself too much in terms of competitive advantage. Yeah. So those are efforts that are going on. It's fairly new, I think. I don't know what the impact of that would be. I'm personally not involved in that, but it's certainly interesting that those things are happening.
Yeah, that there is a sort of willingness to, share a little bit more of this knowledge. We are all in the same situation now. We have been involved in this, exposed to this for some time now. So it's good that any advancement that can be useful for the general public in terms of public health and patient support to novel drugs is going to be shared and used in the whole world. And you mentioned about the data, the importance of data, and you never have enough data. And probably we go a little bit more technical here, but of course the data are super important because that's what the AI is feeding from. It's based all its prediction and all its calculation based on the data that exists. So how we can evaluate the quality of the data that we feed to our model, and how do you feel like the quality of the data is how we can ensure if the quality of the data is not good, how we can ensure that they become good somehow?
Yeah. So that's a fundamental problem, of course, the scarcity of data, especially in the health or life sciences. That's a fundamental problem because at the moment, the way how AI tools work is that they are based on existing knowledge. So whatever you know, they don't, in principle, know more. They might have clever ways of connecting that knowledge. And that's what we, of course, primarily hoping for that they do. You could argue as a human, you might come to the same conclusion, but not that efficiently, or it would take you a very long time. So that's a fundamental problem, of course. So data sometimes is just simply not available and would need to be produced. So specifically, if you wanted to start working on a new target that is just simply dependent on knowing what the disease biology is and how proteins in the body, for example, interact with each other, and it's just simply not there. So I have a fundamental problem that no AI tool would be able to tell you that if the data is not there. The same issue, of course, with toxicology data, for example, because it's very scarce. So just the other day, we had a presentation internally of a model that was created, and it came down to, I think, something like 1,000 data points that were good enough. So it's very a fundamental problem to have the data in the first place and then clean it up, because that's really still very much fundamental to have data that you can rely on, because there are many errors in there. So you need to be able to spot them and to spot data points that are just not useful for your specific task. Yes, you have to be very much aware of what the data structure is, what the really information is in there, because a lot of the data, especially also the public data that is available, let's just think about Campbell, you know that probably yourself, or PubChem is very, very heterogeneous. You really need to understand and have the domain knowledge. What does this data really mean? Because at the end of the day, a lot is there. Basically, it's mixing apples and orange there sometimes, and you need to be aware of that. So yes, it comes certainly a very lot of down that you clean up those data, and you need a domain expert in the specific fields, and that is sometimes really narrow, very, very narrow. And you need really, sometimes it's a specific person who can do that and should be doing that. So yeah, it's a fundamental problem, and especially, as I said, also in chemistry. I mean, some data is a lot of is there, for example, just structures and maybe assay data to a certain degree, where it then becomes particularly also scarce. Specifically for drug discovery is reaction data. Yeah, that's where it becomes very scarce, and very little is there.
So, I mean, you say you need to have a person that is going to be expert in like the field of chemistry, for example, like, but also in computer science, to be able like to understand the data, to spot the error, and make sure that the quality is always maintained. So everything that is given to our model is always reliable and always good for testing the model, so for training the model in predictions. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I just want to point, it doesn't have to be a single person as such. Yes,
no,
and that's typically not what is happening. It's usually a team effort. Yes, there can be always a domain expert who understands the data, knows how to clean it up, but can have a domain expert in model building on the other side as well. So that should be clear. So I don't want to give the picture here that this needs to be done by a single person, because that's certainly not how things are being done. So it can be distributed among several people. But it's just important that there is always some person there who understands very well the individual aspect of making a model.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean that was more about like the expertise required and the type of knowledge required, which needs to be extensive and deep on different aspects from different part on the process. Yeah, and I mean that's then going to of course affect the quality of the outcome, the quality of prediction, and we want, I mean, as you said before, if we want people to use this tool, they need to show that they are let's say better than the existing ones. So that's fundamental. Otherwise there would be no point in developing them or using them in our daily pipeline in novel drug. And of course, like, this is going to be probably a little bit more challenging, but how is the status of communication instead of I mean, of course, internally of the company, usually, yeah, I mean, you can expect that there is a little bit of knowledge, or at least a willingness to learn these kind of things. How it is outside of the scientific community? I mean, when you have to reach to people that are not specifically involved in science, in pharmaceutical science, or in general scientific in the scientific world. How is this taken when we talk about the application of these technologies and these tools in this field or in our daily work?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, but I'm personally actually not really involved in type of communication, so I would not be able to contribute much to it. It's probably one of the more difficult type of conversations that you have. First of all, to explain really what you're doing, then dealing with the skepticism from various angles, of course. I mean, it can be skepticism towards the approach that you are taking, or specifically also sometimes just in science in general. So that's certainly something that is a very challenging part of it. I mean, also the outside communication, also from a company, yeah, also pharmaceutical companies, which of course meet a lot of skepticism from the general public as to how they behave usually, not necessarily what they are doing. That's very well understood generally, but what the perception is, how they do things. But I'm afraid I would probably not be able to give you much or to answer your very much to your question, because I'm not really involved in this kind of communications.
Okay. No. I mean, that's definitely work for I mean, the people that can go out there, and describe what it is and be totally transparent and clear. And there are, of course, like ethical aspects, ethical consideration to be done when we address the development of this novel AI tool. So, I mean, it's important that we have this kind of concept cleared out for the general public, or for people that are willing to learn a little bit more about this word. And I mean, if you can share some of like some of the projects you work on, or like some of the ideas that you managed to put on, like on a real world scenario, or some innovation that you think it's interesting, like for kind of round up the things that we were talking about. So all these novel tool, novel technology, how they are applied. Is there something that you can share?
Yeah, sure. I can always share a little bit. So my work principally is more research based. So I'm not directly involved in drug project campaigns. So that's not really my thing at the moment. I don't have. So I have a little bit. I'm a bit in the background as such. So a lot what comes down is to listen to the requests that come from the user, implement that in software. That can be sometimes just very small things, the kind of information that people want to get out of the software in terms of analysis and so on. So that's one of the things that is just simply daily work. And research-wise, I mean, we're certainly trying to push that further. What is interesting, new topics. Specifically, active learning is something that we are doing. So dealing with large data sets and finding optimized ways of finding, in this particular case, of molecules. That's an iterative algorithms, where you just iterate through and then find intelligent way to find sort of always the best outcome from each iterations. So those kinds of things that I'm also working on. So basically building workflows on top of generative AI, and at the end of the day, always with the aim to speed up the process and become more efficient, and hopefully also come up with suggestions that are of better quality.
Yeah. And how are the requests usually? I mean, do you get a lot of requests from the user in terms of what would you like to do more? What would you like the software to do more? Or it's more about the user experience, how they feel things, or stuff like this?
It is mixed. I mean, the point is that it is a term that we use internally for production. Yeah, so that's one thing. But it's, as I said, it's open source. So we also have outside users it is academics. It's also companies users that come in here, and they can be quite varied. So sometimes it is small things like things that don't work, that just simply come down to a bug. Occasionally, people fix it for you, and then you can just incorporate it into your code. But there's also certainly a request for new functionality. So externally, there was somebody who wanted to do peptides, for example. Yeah, in the meantime, we do that as well because, new modalities in a company exploring that as well. So a lot of this is, of course, driven by actual requests, certainly true, but also from needs from the company as a whole. Yes. So especially as I pointed out, we're doing small molecules at the moment that should be extended into other modalities, such as peptides, for example. Then the other big thing at the moment is 3D generation directly in the target and see what we can get out of that. That's a very hot field at the moment. A lot of application around, also in academia. So that's one of the things where driving forces, where the driving force is. So a lot comes out of user needs, but also general strategies of a company.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. And yeah, of course, you have your focus on small molecules, and how it is different from you say you also had to work with peptide generation, or like you see this applied also to biotech drugs like vaccine, antibodies, and these kind of things for this generative AI. Of course, small molecules are maybe a little bit more manageable, being small. How do you see this applied to bigger, let's say, molecules or bigger stuff?
We see how that works. It is fairly new. So, peptides are still somehow manageable because they maybe big, small molecules in a sense, and they are treated technically in the same way. The challenge is them, I think, more in assessing them as to their quality, because there is a lot about 3D information that you need, obviously. Yeah. In small molecules, sometimes you can get away with not knowing too much about this one. You know that yourself as a computational chemist. So yeah, we will see how that will work out. So it's fairly new, and how well it works, I can't tell you yet at the moment because I simply don't know myself. But yes, that's where the journey goes. Yes, so there is a constant stream of innovations, constant stream of ideas, and we are pushing always forward in that direction and see that we can incorporate that into our software as much as we possibly can.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely, keeping the mind open to innovation and novel ideas, and see how the flow goes. Okay, then, we have talked about a lot of things, and I thank you for all the amazing insights that you gave us during this episode. I want to, give you also the chance to speak to everyone that is listening, that is probably about to start a career in this world. I don't know, probably students or someone that is looking for a change, wants to work with this technology, because it's, as we said before, now everyone wants to work with AI. What are the suggestions? What are the advice that you would give to someone interested in starting the same career as yours, or like the type of or work in this area as you do?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm a bit an interesting case because I don't have a typical career. When you come from chemistry, and that could be probably also the inspiring point here, that I come as out of a traditional chemistry study as it was done 30 years ago, although I quickly changed into theoretical chemistry, so that was quantum chemistry and molecular dynamics simulations. So and then a lot about software development, that I basically learned everything by myself. And here I am now doing AI for a relatively short amount of time in my career, maybe professionally the last 2 years, so more or less exactly the 2 years. So advice, how do I put this? So as you, I mean, I'm just one. Yes, no. I mean, from my personal point of view, it does not always have to be a linear career, and especially for AI, I think this is especially true at the moment because it's a fairly young field. I mean, yes, in academia, it was always there present for many decades, of course, but it's probably exploding right now. There's a lot of interest there, but for it can be a non-linear career, certainly. I mean, we have, I think, someone in the department who actually studied, I think, psychology or so, and then switched over, and he's working quite successfully in the field. And I think that should be encouraging to anyone. Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, it's just simply, I mean, the interest. If you're interested there, so the willingness is already there. Hurdles will be always there. I mean, you need a certain level of training at least. I mean, it's often said that you need a lot of math, of course, in it, and it's can be very heavy in computer science, but that's not necessarily the only way to go about it. I personally don't have that strong a math background and certainly not a background in computer science, for example, as well. And you can still be successful. There are always parts that you can cover. In my case, it's the oversight of a piece of software that is developed, the application of it. That's a very different thing. So if you have a science background, then there is not something really new as such. I mean, it's a new tool and you're probably used to that as well. As a software engineer, I just pointed out, obviously you can transition into that field also quite successfully from that point of view, because you know how to generate software in the first place. And you can learn, of course, the things that you need to work with AI. And as I said, it does not always need to be the detailed knowledge about how an algorithm works. So sometimes you can just use existing models and apply them. And then there's the whole field of data science, for example, which is particularly interesting because it's a mix about some sort of software development. So if you have that background or would also see that as an alternative where AI is some subset, it's not all that you're doing, where you need to know about some things about software development, some things about data. You need to have a bit of statistics as well, or maybe a lot of statistics, depending on what level you're working on. And of course, some domain knowledge. And the domain knowledge, of course, is also something that you need to build up anyway over time, because you have a certain background, you have a certain field that you come from, and I hope you can learn new things. And typically people can do that. I mean, it just said before, a lot of our people do not come from anything related to pharmaceuticals in general, computer scientists, and can be very successful in this field as well. So at the end of the day, it comes, of course, a lot of down that you are willing to learn, that you can learn, of course, as well. And I think that's generally true. And of course, I understand sometimes you might have hurdles in there and would need to invest extra time and probably also money, depending on where you come from, on specific education. Yeah, that's just unfortunately the case. But principally, yes, you can have a successful career also when you change in the middle of your career that you're having right now, move into something new. And for young people who just come into the field right now, probably it's a good time anyway. I mean, certain fields of AI are probably very much crowded from what I hear, and it's difficult to get a job. Also, the general job situation in some countries, yes, that's certainly true. But pharmaceutical companies, it's fairly young still, and talent is always sought after.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, to keep like the learning mentality and curiosity about other things. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the background, of course, helps you like to overcome the hurdles. But then, I mean, this is always there is always something new about this field every week. So I mean, we have to keep that learning mentality and openness about innovation, about new things. That's a great message, and for everyone,
that's a fundamental
that
aspect. Yeah, just sorry that I jump in. That's a fundamental aspect. Yes, it's a continuous learning about this one, and if you principally like this, if you like to learn, then you're certainly golden in that field as well. Because as you just said, it's exceptionally fast moving, and it's very difficult in principle to know even what is happening right at the moment. Yeah, so you will certainly also have to specialize in a sense, yeah, because you just cannot have this breadth really just in the field in itself. But yes, I think it is certainly, I would say it as a very rewarding career that you can do. And it can be also a nice basis. It does not have to mean that you start out basis, then work into, for example, a certain industry and think that you are stuck there. You can always move on, especially with a background like AI, because at the end of the day, it's about model building, and that is useful in other areas as well.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely true. Good then. Okay, Hans. I mean, I thank you again for participating. It was a very, very interesting conversation we had. I hope you enjoyed being here with us. And to everyone listening, thank you, and speak to you soon.